Welcome to the Second Time Around podcast with LaShawn and Makela Mims, a weekly conversation about love, life, and marriage from the perspective of a couple who are taking the journey a second time around.
But I thank God in all I lost, I found you. As I give you this ring, just know you're my greatest blessing. All the good and the bad will make this love true.
Hey, family. It is the Second Time Around podcast. We are here once again. I am your co-host, LaShawn Mims. You know I'm a pastor, but that's not it. I'm a father, a grandfather, a son.
Yes.
And you know what? Most importantly, I am the husband. The husband of a wonderful queen that I love so much, and I want her to introduce herself.
Hey, y'all. How are you? I am your other host of the Second Time Around podcast. My name is Makela Mims. I am a mama. I am a Mimi. I am a giddy, over the top, in love with her husband, wife, and I am a marriage and family therapist. And so we are just excited to have you here at the Second Time Around podcast, where we are going to talk about what, my love?
We're going to talk about life, love, and family.
The second time around.
Life, love, and family. Yeah, that's it.
We're going to have some fun. We're going to have some fun too, y'all. That's what we're going to do. Baby, what we talking about today?
We're going through our origin story. We talked about me for a while, and today we have the opportunity to talk about Makela. Yeah, Makela. Where'd she come from? Who her people? We want to know that. We want to know all about Miss Makela. And I don't want to hold back. I'm excited. I'm curious. I know some things, but then there's some things that I know I don't know the whole story. And I'm sure our listeners want to know all about you. So you on, girl.
You know what? It's something wrong with you, but that's okay. I'm in this now, and I'm going to stay with you. How about that?
Please do. Please do.
Yes, sir. Well, I will be the first person to tell you that I don't think that there's anything special about me. I am from San Francisco, California, born and raised.
Frisco.
Yay, area. Okay, I'm a little silly too. So, yep, I was born in San Francisco at Mount Zion Hospital, which is a different hospital now. It's named differently, but right there on the corner of Geary and Divisadero. See, anybody from San Francisco knows that corner, where the Honey Bay Can place is now.
Yep. That's it.
That's where that
right
is.
there.
Anyway, from San Francisco, I grew up in a household with just my mom. And this is an interesting dynamic, and I have to kind of think through how to explain it. But It was my mom and my sister, my older sister, who is 4.5, almost 5 years older than me. And so I guess I'll just kind of explain that just a little bit. So I have 5 sisters. And the way this works out is, from my mother's children, I am the youngest of 2 children. From my father's children, I am the middle child. So I have 2 sisters that are older than me from my dad, and 2 sisters that are younger than me from my dad. And so I am in the middle. So it's really an interesting set of circumstances. But yeah, that's kind of my sibling makeup. So I'm excited to say, though, I grew up in a house with lots of love, lots of discipline, and lots of music. I've said before on the podcast that Sean and I are both musical people. My mom was that person that, when we get up in the morning on Saturday, we didn't really want to get up, but she would put on Aretha Franklin, Respect. And so we knew it was time to get up and jump to it. Anyway, so yeah, just my mom, my sister, and myself. And I would see my other sisters. Actually, when I was younger, probably more than I recall. My youngest sister is 20 years younger than me. So she wasn't a part of my growing up years. She was, she came along a little later, and I love her. She is amazing. I love all my sisters. So yeah, nothing special about me. I went to all of my schooling actually was done in San Francisco. I was a cheerleader. Like I had this really interesting kind of life. I did sort of the stereotypical high school things. So I was a cheerleader. I played volleyball. I swam. What else did I do? I was in student government. I was a part of the Black Student Union in our high school. We called it the Allen Locke Society. For those of you who don't know, Allen Locke was the first African-American Rhodes Scholar. And so we had a really cool teacher, Mr. Glenn at McAteer, and he named the BSU the Allen Locke Society. And so, yeah, my dad was my dad. Let me see. How do I describe him? My father was this tall, dark-skinned, very handsome guy, very, very handsome guy. And I remember growing up, I loved my daddy. Unfortunately, my dad was not a consistent presence in my life. He would come and go. He had a unique line of work. And so he would come and go, and he wasn't always there. But I do have some really fond memories of my dad being around. But it definitely was not like I had a dad in the house all of the time. And so I found myself, I think, from time to time, even from being a small child up until, I think if I'm being honest, into my adult years, where I had places in my life that I really wished I had had that more consistent presence of a dad, but he just wasn't that kind of guy.
Let's kind of go back to 5 sisters.
5.
Yeah, 5 sisters. And you had one sister that lived with you that was an older sister.
Yes.
Right. So I'm just curious, at what age did you recognize that I've got these sisters and they don't live with me?
Oh, that's a good question. I can vividly remember the first time meeting my sisters. I believe I was around age 7, somewhere in there, 6 or 7. And we lived in Daly City at the time, around the corner from Shakey's Pizza. Right?
Lovely. Shakey's Pizza.
Right? Mom Pizza. Yeah. Anyway, Mojo Potatoes. Anyway.
Oh my goodness. I'm hungry.
Yeah, you're so funny. I remember my dad coming to pick me up, and then we went to, now, only people from the city really know this. We went to the Sugar Plum.
Oh my goodness.
To the restaurant, and we sat down, and I vividly remember meeting my sisters and just kind of looking at them. There were 2 older than me and one who was the same age as me. Well, she's actually 4 months younger than me, but that's right. I'm still the big sister. So it was an interesting time, but I vividly remember that. And I had pancakes and sausage. I will never forget that day.
Okay. What? You said that you had fond memories. Your father and your mother. Did you have like fond memories of them being together?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. So my mom and dad had an interesting relationship that was kind of on again and off again. And I can remember being a very little girl, elementary school age. I remember we lived across the street from the beach at that time, around the corner from the end Judah, at the end of the line of the end Judah. And I can remember my dad coming over and hanging out with my mom, and we would all pile on the couch and watch TV. And I would have these pockets of time when I was like, oh, yep, my mommy and my dad either going to be together, or my dad's going to be here every day, and we just going to be this one big happy family. And so I had those moments with them, and they would happen kind of like in a cycle. If I'm really thinking back on it correctly, I think that they had stretches when they were together, I'm assuming, because I was a little girl, and, that was a time when you didn't get in grown folks' business, right? And so, yeah, those were times that I was really excited about, but then that would change and I would be sad.
Okay. Yeah, man, I have to say I know a lot about you, but I haven't heard this part.
No?
No.
Yeah, those were times that were really difficult for me. Yeah. Every kid, I think, wants the ideal family. And I always fantasized and dreamed, would have these dreams about us always being together. Interestingly enough, the dreams very rarely contain the sister that lived with me. And I don't know why. No shade, sissy. I love you. But it really was more about my mom and my dad being together. And you know what? Now that I think about it, I think a large part of that was my sister that lived with me. She saw her father fairly regularly. And she had a grandmother that we would go to that grandmother's house and we would spend the night. She would treat me like her granddaughter. And so I think I wanted that, but I didn't have that. And so I think that might be why my sister wasn't in some of those dreams that I had.
Okay. Yeah. That brings up something very interesting that you're saying. Having 5 siblings, but at the same time being an only child.
Felt like it.
Yeah.
Felt like it.
Because you are actually the only child of your mother and your father per se in the...
Oh, that's true. I never thought about it that way. Leave it to you to pull something like that out.
In their union. Because your sister does not have the same father.
Correct.
That you have.
Correct.
So what was that like? What did that feel like?
I think I didn't really think too much about that until I got older, because my mother never made it seem like that's your sister over here and that's your sister over there. She never did that. It was just my older sister. And so I didn't really think too much about being kind of the only child until I got to be older, when I realized that I kind of sort of didn't feel like I fit in any of the families. There were my 3 sisters that all had the same mother and father. Then there was me. And then, a couple decades later was my younger sister, youngest, and she had a different mom. And so I never thought about, I never really fit in anywhere. That really kind of hit me, I think, when I got older, probably closer to graduating from high school. So it made an impact that I didn't feel until I was a little bit older. Yeah.
Okay, cool. What about grandparents?
That is interesting. So I never knew my grandparents. I have a woman who was a grandmother figure to me. And so if ever you hear me refer to my grandmother, it's her, but we would actually call her auntie. So my mom got married when I was 4 years old. She met a guy from Texas. And when I tell you I was so excited to be somebody's daughter, I didn't know what to do with myself. I won't use the last name, but his first name was Bruce, and I would call him Daddy Bruce. So I was a really cute kid. And I was that kid.
No, get out of here.
I was.
Okay.
But you know what? I was that cute kid who knew she was cute.
Oh, yeah.
The kind that can I have and could bat the eyelashes. I was, I knew how to work the system per se. And
You know how to work it, huh?
yes. And Bruce was a sweet, sweet man to me. And
Okay.
I could get whatever I wanted. So he was a daddy for me and loved him. So his mother, her name was Faye, Irma Faye. And it was Irma Faye who was a grandmother figure for me, even though we called her Auntie Faye. Even after Bruce and my mom weren't together anymore, we would still go and spend summers in Dallas with her. And the funny part about that is after a while, my sister wouldn't go anymore, but I wanted to go because, again, I had that longing to have a family. And you couldn't tell her I wasn't her granddaughter. I think that left a big impression on me. And I remember when she passed, it was tough on me. I was 16. I'll never forget that. And yeah, that was tough because we had graduation plans, honey. We was going to do some things. We were.
Good. So what about grandfather? A grandfather figure? Or?
No, I never had a grandfather figure. I was fortunate enough. My mother had 2 brothers.
Okay.
And so my uncles were around. And so my mom is from Oklahoma, Ardmore. Shout out to Ardmore, Oklahoma. Don't nobody know where Ardmore is, but I do. And so my mom had 2 brothers. One lived in California for a while, my Uncle Earl. And so I'll tell y'all about Uncle Earl later. That was my dude. And my Uncle Ronnie. And so I didn't have a grandfather. So I had a couple of voids in my life with regard to that. Never knew. I heard about my maternal grandfather, but I never met him because he had passed away and my grandmother had passed away before I was born, but never knew anything about my grandparents on my dad's side.
Okay. What was that feeling like to this may be a little difficult conversation or a difficult question. What was it like for you? I think we've heard you say that your father wasn't always there. So for your father not to always be there and not to really have any connection or history to identify yourself with from your father. From what you've said, it's like I've had these figures, but even though having, as they often say, is that, you know, feeling lonely in a crowded room. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've got all these things around me. I've got all this love from all of these siblings. I've got all this stuff, but really when it comes down to it, I can't really point in any direction of where I'm from. What did that feel like?
Because I know you and I believe I know where you're going. Yeah, it does feel a little unsettling, meaning you don't know who you're related to. That's not to say that I didn't know that I had cousins and things like that, but there was a cousin, a first cousin that I didn't meet until I was good and grown. I was 40 something. And I was like, oh, I actually have a first cousin. And so it was a little odd for me to really not know where my roots were. Like I know my dad is from Texas, but beyond that, I didn't know a lot about him. Siblings, I know he had a sibling. That's how I got the first cousin. But it was hard. It was hard really feeling like I didn't belong anywhere and that I don't want to paint this grim picture that I was alone in the world because I wasn't, but I also had these really difficult moments where I kind of did feel alone because I didn't know my family. Like my siblings, my sisters, I feel like they had insight and connection to family that I didn't have. And I think that was in part because of how I came into the world. And because of how I came into the world, I didn't have the benefit of some of the connections that they had. It was lonely and it kind of, I wouldn't say identity crisis, but it was interesting. I would, when I was a little girl, make up stuff. And it wasn't true, but I would make up stuff about where I was from. And I don't know, it might have been true.
Mm. Cool. I'm it's just hearing it, and some of these things I've heard before. I have to admit to our audience, I've heard some of it before, but just hearing it the way that you tell it brings a different vantage to it, a different point of view to it. You know, it's one thing to talk about something and you just kind of gloss over it when you're in a relationship or you're getting into a relationship with somebody. Many things we just kind of gloss over and say, well, I'm from this place, I'm this and that. And the things that may, I'm using some big words today, the things that may uncover our heart, so to speak, we tend to want to say, well, let me not give you that. Because if I give you that, you may run away.
Yes.
If I give you this part, if I expose the unpretty part of it, you may run away.
Exactly.
So just hearing that, just hearing the situation versus my situation. And so how it is, like you said, you don't want to put a damper on things, but it's real. It's real life. It's real life.
It is real. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, because we all come, right, with our stuff. We all come with our own suitcases. And,
exactly.
you know, some suitcases are like trunks, like those steamer trunks with lots and lots of stuff in it, and it's heavy. And some are the cute little like hat boxes that are relatively light and they carry the pretty things. And I have some very pretty things. And I have some things that are heavy, like what needs to go in the steamer trunk. And if you know, trying to carry them up the stairs, you know how you carry a bag up the stairs, it's like clunk, clunk, clunk.
You have to drag it.
Exactly. And so I think you're spot on when you say there's some things that, you know, when you expose them and when you show them, it does kind of make you wonder, you know, how people will see you. And my family is very intricate and it's very layered and there's so much to it. I tell this story sometimes. When I was in grad school, we had to do what's called a genogram. And the genogram is a family tree of sorts, but it's a little more in depth because it connects closeness, being disconnected, all kinds of things that may have happened in your family. There are symbols to indicate what they are. And so I always say a lot of my classmates had these cute, neat little like 8x10 or 8x11, like little pieces of paper. So cute, so nice. Not me. I had to bring out like the poster board that folded on the side, you know, is that cardboard? What is that made out of? Whatever it is, you can bend it on the side. Because, honey, there was so much to unpack with my family. And I spent a lot of years embarrassed by that and didn't really want people to know that. And so it's gotten a lot better over the years, but it definitely has impacted like how I see relationships and things of that nature.
I just want to let our listeners know that we are unpacking this part of us and that you probably will hear in a couple of episodes because we want to show you how individual people lead up into a merger of one heart, one mind, one soul. We want to show you that there are times when the merger or the blend is not always perfect. It's not going to be perfect. And I think for couples that are thinking about getting married, for couples who are married presently, or couples who have been married a couple of times or going into new relationships, is that you can never file down your stuff so much that it blends perfectly. It's never going to blend perfectly. I heard Makela say that for a while, I had some things that were embarrassing. Even coming from a 2-parent household, there's some things still that sounds so perfect. Everybody thinks your life is so great, but there's some embarrassing things that even at 51, I'm still like, I don't know if anybody, my parents are not here anymore and they're gone on to be with Jesus. But I don't know if some people are ready to hear some things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if you really know that. If you knew that about me, how would you look at me differently?
Yeah. And I think that's it. Like that fear of being judged and being criticized and being, thought less of because your life wasn't, when we were growing up, your life wasn't like the Brady Bunch, because even the Brady Bunch was a blended family, right? But it was like so nice, like everything fell into place, and that's not always the way things work out. And I think it's important to say about my own family, we had a lot of love, and I was very, very fortunate that my sister's mom, incredible woman. She was awesome. She was so kind and so sweet to me as well as to my mom. And so I can't say enough about their mother or my younger sister's mom. And so this is not to put anybody on blast, but just to say family is family, and family comes in different shapes, right? And so I had a lot of love growing up. My mother was, oh my goodness, she loved music. And we had so many records, man, so many records. And I can remember growing up with music and singing, and my mom was the one that hosted all the time. My mother, for real, was the glue in our family. She was the glue, and I really appreciated that about her. And now that she's not here, I can see how not just, how our family just kind of, you go off and do your own thing, and now you got your family and all the cousins are grown and have kids and families of their own. But my mother really was kind of that linchpin that held it all together. And so I loved that about her. You know how you said your grandma was like the one that wanted to do it up big for Christmas? That was my mom. And so Christmas was always a big deal in our family. And so I have amazing memories of Christmas and spending time with my family. So like I said, I really appreciate all of the things that my mom gave me. Ridiculous work ethic. She was part entrepreneur. She was a legal secretary for a long time. She was an administrator extraordinaire. She was everything. And she could, take nothing and create stuff out of it. Like I can remember a time when my mama, we were so excited because we were having breakfast for dinner. I'll never, ever forget that. We were like, ooh, we're having breakfast for dinner. We had no idea that we had breakfast for dinner because that's all she had. And she just stretched it. And I love that about her, that she, to me, was super creative. She loved plants. So we grew up with lots of plants. So that's why I always want to plant in the house. My poor husband, one of my plants over there in the corner, my grandbaby just slaps at it. And I'm like, okay, don't beat up Mimi's plant. But anyway, so yeah, I got a lot of stuff from her. She was just this really a Jill of all trades.
Okay.
Very much so, a Jill of all trades.
Do us a favor here.
Yes.
So what was the long lasting thing that she put into you?
Ooh. Oh.
That she deposited into you?
So this is really weird. I'm going to say this to you, but it's a positive and a not positive all at the same time. The thing that my mother left me with was to keep going, to keep pressing. I can remember she would say, I don't have time to have a nervous breakdown because I've got these kids to raise. I don't have time for that until she had one. Right. So I get that, no matter what, you've got to keep going. And that's a good thing. And sometimes it's a not so good thing because she was tired. She worked a lot and she was tired. And so it was a good thing in that I learned how to depend on myself, maybe to a fault sometimes, but I learned to be independent from her, as well as just hardworking and to love your kids, kids hard. Sometimes, like throw a shoe across the room hard, but hard.
Yeah. What about your father? What was the lasting thing that he deposited in you?
I think from my daddy, what I got was a hard lesson. And that hard lesson was to be present. My dad left me with that lesson to be present. And I learned that lesson because I was fiercely protective of my son. And I'll tell you all a little bit about my kids maybe next time, but fiercely protective of my son. And it was super duper important to me that his dad be present. So I did whatever I needed to do for the most part to make sure that those two, my son and his dad, had a connection. So presence was a lesson that my dad taught me. Unfortunately, the way I learned it was because he wasn't very present, but I learned the importance of showing up for your kids. You got to show up for your kids.
So out of a negative came a positive response.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
I think that's good.
Thank
That's
you.
a really good thing. I think that should help somebody right there.
It should. Thanks, Dad.
Out of a negative breeds a positive.
Yeah.
It was what was meant for evil.
Huh.
Come on.
Hiya.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's good. Wow. So many nuggets.
Oh.
And
It's funny that you say that. I don't look at them as nuggets. I look at them as character building moments, right? It wasn't so easy to say it back then, but now, in this part of my life, I can look back at my family and share these things and think a lot about what my parents gave me. I could say this too about my dad. He really was instrumental in me wanting to sing. He played the guitar and he would pluck notes out on the guitar and I would match the notes vocally. So a lot of people learn how to play, not play, but sing from a piano. I didn't. I learned from a guitar. And then also my daddy, who, boy, was a stickler for words. You had better be able to spell it if you used it. You needed to be able to use it in a sentence and it needed to be in the correct content because he would always say, people can take a lot of things from you, but they cannot take away your education. They can't take away what's in your mind. And so my father was super articulate, very, very smart man. And I think that that's probably another thing that I was able to take away from him is just to educate yourself as much as possible.
You guys need to know that my wife is like a stickler for words. Every time that I get up and say something or every time that I say something, my wife will come behind me after everything's over and she would say that you mean this way. That's how you say it. Practice it with me, and I have to practice it before I say it.
Yes, you must enunciate.
Right, because I'll just go and say something.
He sure will.
I'll just say it, and
that's okay because I like him.
And I want everybody else to figure it out. What is he saying?
That's not right. That's cold.
Yeah,
that's cold. That's cold.
yeah.
That's cold.
Well, I think we've had a good time.
We have.
We are coming to the end of this episode.
Yes.
We have had a treat getting to know a little bit about our host and her origin.
Oh, thank you.
Her story, because let me say to you, every story is important.
It is.
And every story is a building block to an overall outlook of life. So I think we found out a lot of stuff in this episode, but I think we're going to find out a little bit more
maybe
next episode. So thank you so much for that. We want to let you know about our email address.
Yes.
You know what? This podcast, this second time around, is only as good as those that are with us. Our email address is the number 2, the letter X at judahinthegrove.com. Once again, second time
at judahinthegrove.com.
So until next time.
We are grateful that you have joined us today. And in the meantime, we pray that you are happy, healthy, and that you thrive. See you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.
Thank you for joining us this week. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you in our next episode.